Okay, so some questions. I think I'll try to get through. I think I'll go for 2 questions first, and then I'll see if I've got any more time to cover anything else. But for today, let's see. Okay, so what was the question? What are the benefits of yoga? Well, firstly, like, what yoga are you talking about? Yoga doesn't just talk about the physical stuff. Talk about the benefits of practicing yoga asana. Okay, so every position usually ends in the word asana. Asana is a word for posture. It can also mean a seated position or a position from which a practitioner can meditate. But in general, modern practice times, asana class is basically called yoga class, right? And you do a variety of asanas, a variety of postures, positions for the body, okay? Sometimes in this class, which you might go to a gym and they'll have a yoga class, or you might go to a studio, or you might do private classes, right? I think most of them will probably at some point tell you to lie down at the end of the class, and that position is called savasana or shavasana, right? So you see it ends in asana again, but in that instance you're lying down. You probably will have heard of it if you've heard of yoga and you've done any yoga. You'll probably know that one and be like, oh, I know that one very well. I'm very good at lying down, right? And what else might you have in such a class? You might have a bit of breathing exercises, so breath work, okay? So I'll talk about the benefits of practicing such a class. There's a lot, okay? And there's different types of benefits. There is physical, so benefits to your body, mental, to your brain, right? Your mental state of being, and also spiritual. And I don't mean like your connection to God, if you believe in God, or I mean how you relate to people. So your relationships to yourself, what is your sense of self? Not what is your identity as a person. Like you might be like, I'm a doctor, I'm a this, I'm a that. Even more than that, your very essence. What is your essence? Who do you think you are? What do you think of yourself, right? And also your connection to, or lack of connection to sometimes, of how people perceive you. So how do people see you as? So you might think of yourself as one way and people think of yourself as another way. And then how do you relate to other people? And therefore your relationships with them, your connections with them, connection with yourself, connection with others, right? So it's not, you know what I mean? It's not religious. I'm not talking about a religious thing. So there's 3 types of benefits. And sometimes there's a bit of a link between all 3 of them, right? So as you improve in one area, you experience benefits in one area, they start to kind of cascade across into another area, and then into another area, and then there's a feedback, right? It kind of circulates and percolates, and things just seem to get better and better. And I'm not saying this will change your life, this won't pay your mortgage, this won't, But in a general sense, it's more likely than not going to be good for your physical health. It is more likely than not going to be good for your mental health. There are studies that show this. People practicing, experience benefit, whereas before they were experiencing depression. It won't cure depression, right? We don't say that yoga is a treatment for any kind of ailment, physical or mental or spiritual, but it certainly seems to help. Over here in Indonesia, where I'm living most of the time, I meet a lot of people who do yoga because they're general practitioners, so their doctor told them to do yoga for back pain. So us as yoga practitioners, we don't treat anything. But a lot of people refer their patients to us for these reasons, okay? And so let's break it down a little bit more. Physical. Actually, let's go back even further. Why might you get these benefits? Now, to think about why we would get such benefits out of yoga, let's talk about what is yoga, apart from, what I said before, asana class. We're talking about asana class. Yoga, the word yoga in various texts has different definitions, okay? We have a lot of different texts about yoga. Some of these texts are very, very old, okay? So one way yoga has been described as is perfected concentration. So you can really hear that idea of how it is a meditative practice, even if you are doing a physical class, so an asana class, and you're moving your body. There is still that focus on mind, body, concentration, awareness, self-mastery, right? Another way yoga has been described is as skill in action. So we are trying to move with intelligence in a yoga class. You're trying to really dictate every part of your body, every cell of your body, right? So nothing is left to its own devices, right? And we are even paying attention to how we breathe. Breathing can be an automatic thing, but breathing is also one of the functions of the body that we can actually have control over. You can hold your breath, or you can lengthen your breath. You can speed it up, you can slow it down. Okay, so we are even paying attention to that. The word yoga itself means, I'm referring to my notes, so bear with me. So the word yoga itself means union. Okay, this is a Sanskrit word. The word itself means union or yoke. It comes from the root word yuj. And what are you joining together? The idea is that yoga is bringing together aspects of the self that have been divided, but they're not supposed to be divided. So that's what yoga means. It means connection. Now, the class that I described, the asana class, it's a very general description, and it's going to vary from style to style. There's a lot of different styles of yoga that you can do, and there are a lot of teachers. So different teachers are going to have their own style too, right? But we'll talk about the overall benefits, and you will have to decide what's for you. Okay. So I think I'll just go really briefly through the physical benefits: flexibility, strength, mobility, range of motion, pain management. For some people, they find it helpful, right? Depending on what kind of yoga you do, it can be a very nice way to maintain a physical practice whilst you're recovering from some kind of injury. We have a lot of modifications in yoga, so anyone can do yoga, right? No matter how young you are, how old you are, how fit you are, how unfit you are, whether you have some kind of limitation, right? Anybody can do yoga. One expression that I really like to hear is the only type of person who can't do yoga is a lazy person. So you get the idea. You just have to be willing, okay? And then you can reap benefits of yoga. So let's move on to, they are still physical benefits, but they're more, the impact on your mental health is probably more obvious than the physical side of things. It's a little bit of a hidden thing, and that's stress management. we know now, like there are studies and you can go look for them, okay? But in the gist of it is that practicing yoga has been shown to help with your perceived levels of stress and your ability to handle stress or stressful environment. Basically, you're developing your resilience, your tolerance for stressful situations. And, you know, the impact of stress on health has been studied, right? And you've probably heard that people who are stressed have a weaker immune system than those who are not reporting such high levels of stress, right? You can also, I mean, not just your immune system, but also your levels of happiness, right, are impacted by your ability to manage stress, right? Your satisfaction, your enjoyment of life. So your quality of life is impacted by these things, and your ability to tolerate any kind of stress or duress, right? So that's mental result of a physical practice. And how does that happen? Well, one of the things is because there's so much mind-body connection or an emphasis on such a thing during your yoga class, when you're doing your practice, you're being asked to focus on your breathing, and you're being asked to focus on what you are physically doing. In theory, over time, you are not going to be thinking about the future, and you're not going to be thinking as much about the past, right? You are going to be fully present, right, in theory, right? And for the most part, you probably will experience little flashes of this. And when you are fully present, it's very hard to worry about something that is going to happen to you or might not happen to you. It's very hard to dwell over something that happened to you previously. So just by fully being present and being aware and just fully being in that moment, it cuts out a lot of this noise. And when you have that, it really helps to shift and lighten your mood, even if it's just that instant, right? And if you practice regularly, you can experience a little bit more of those little moments, right? And it's got a cumulative effect. Every little bit of yoga practice you do, it adds up, right? So even if you did a couple of minutes of this practice regularly, consistently, it will build. It's like you've got a little savings of little moments of building and adding to this. And what happens inside your mind is you're slowly rewiring your brain. The brain is not hardwired as people used to think it was or believe it was, right? There's this concept called neuroplasticity. And that's the elasticity, basically, of the brain. It can change. You can change your thoughts. You can affect thought patterns. So you might meet someone and, you know what I mean, like you meet them and you're like, oof, this person, they've got, you know, and they seem very negative. Well, you know what? They won't always be a negative person, and they may not always have been a negative person. And just because they currently are doesn't mean that they will always stay that way if they start to make little changes and you have to practice it. And slowly what will happen is that person will create new connections in the brain, and they're creating new circuitry. And the more they do it, the stronger it gets. So you can become more of a negative person, or you can become more of a positive person just by changing these little things or practicing these little things, right? And as you become more present, you're developing the ability to be more present because you're strengthening those little brain muscles, let's call them, okay? More you use it, stronger it gets. Use it or lose it. Okay, put it that way. So that's something that takes part in the brain, physical, totally physical, right? But it's got such a huge impact on your experience or perception of the day, of your life. And you know what? As you then have this experience, people will have their perception of you, right? And like it or not, how people treat us is, affected by their perception of us, right? But if you're portraying a certain kind of, giving off a vibe, for want of a better word, you're giving off a certain vibe, people will respond to it in a certain way. And part of it's going to be colored by their own personality and their own, daily experience of the world, right? Their own worldview. But as you become, right, as you tap into a little bit more of this self-mastery, people will respond to that, right? And that gives you feedback. And you're like, oh, it's pretty okay world out here, right? And then you give yourself that confirmation that, yeah, it is, this is so, right? And then you strengthen it again. And then you give off that again, that persona, right? And people respond to it again, and it just continues, and you're strengthening this feedback loop. So, you ask yourself, what is the feedback loop that I would like to strengthen? Do I want to strengthen the kind of loop where people are like, oh my God, here she comes, everybody get out the way? Or do you want to strengthen that kind of vibe where people are like, I cannot wait to see this person. They always make my day. Do you know what I mean? And because they're so happy, like just from, you benefit each other in that way. And then you take that home with you, and you keep going, right? You keep doing it. Go back a little bit more to this brain circuitry thing. Learning something new doesn't have to be yoga. It could be learning the piano, if you've never touched a piano. It could be learning to draw. You could be drawing badly, it doesn't matter. And who gets to say what's good, what's bad anyway? But learning new skills will also build new synapses. So at any given time, you can continue to essentially grow your brain. You can continue to get stronger, even mentally. Okay. Another thing that is physical, but you may not see it very quickly, but this benefit is definitely worthwhile trying to, this benefit is definitely worth practicing for regularly. There is something called mitochondria. Okay, in very simple terms, mitochondria is responsible for production of energy for your cells, the cells, you, what you consist of. And mitochondria also dictate cell death. They're also responsible for the signaling between cells, right? So the better the mitochondria functions, brain freeze. So the better they function, the better they can do their job, right? Just like anything else, right? So the better the working conditions are for them, the better they do their job. And there is a correlation, and correlation does not mean the same as causation, but there's a relationship there. There's a relationship between the health of mitochondria and aging. So I'll just put that there, okay? You can think about that and look it up for yourself, okay? But I think of it as a benefit. A little bit more about yoga and the benefits for stress management. mentioned, stress impacts your immune. And one of the insidious things about stress, even if it's like a low level stress, but it's chronic, right? It means it's always there, right? It's always in the background, right? This background stuff, is that your body produces hormones in response to stress, right? And hormones have impact on the system. And the issue becomes, if you are constantly stressed, then the body is constantly in what's called, like, what's with all these door closing sounds? I don't know if the microphone is picking this up, but like, things are slamming around here. Anyway, the body will be in fight or flight mode, right? This is survival mode. And that sounds cool, right? I mean, definitely in caveman times, right? The best example always given about flight or fight mode is, caveman defending the cave, out hunting for food, very important for survival if you have food. If you don't have food, game over. The other thing is like running from saber-toothed tigers, so flight, that's when it, and so he needs that. And what happens is the body will shut down certain functions in times of survival mode to the bare essentials, because you need to store up all the resources that you have and save them and divert them towards the essentials, what's essential for your survival. So things like your fertility, your digestion, those are not essential to survival, right? There's a whole bunch of other systems that will get shut down. But anyway, they shut down essentially, or they just don't function at their general ideal level. So you might find that, when you're nervous, say you're going through a bit of a stressful moment, like maybe you've got some really big presentations coming up at work and some meetings, and you know that it might get a little bit confrontational, or you're just a bit, and you might, when you have those like tummy problems, that's what that is, right? So there's a physiological response to this incoming stuff or these circumstances. And so if you can handle stress, a reasonable amount of stress, right, by working on your stress management techniques, and building resilience, that's going to help you, and it's going to help your body from not having a freak out every single time. And if you're doing breathing during the yoga class, holding your breath, you're practicing your breathing, this helps to down-regulate your stress levels. Okay, so your nervous system starts to so you can, with breathing techniques, you can impact blood pressure, your heart rate, right? If you breathe very quickly, like very rapidly, you can almost feel your heart rate start to pound, right? As if you've been running. Or as if you slow down your breathing, if you had a heart rate monitor on or a blood pressure monitor on, you can potentially see it go down. So there's some studies that show that some practitioners are able to regulate their heart rate, their blood pressure, just using breathing techniques. So they might have been doing this for quite some time. And I certainly notice that when I do my breathing and I'm getting my blood pressure monitored, I can impact it when I'm breathing. And so that's a way that's going to help you. Another benefit, and this is kind of one of those cumulative benefits, is because there's so much emphasis on being present, and almost there's a quality of accepting where you are every day. The result of that is some people start to turn towards looking at other aspects of their lifestyle, and they start to want to build more healthy habits into their lifestyle. And I think, maybe the reasoning for me would be because, well, you develop this self-love. You work towards self-love for some people. And you start to become very compassionate, and you start to realize how good it feels to look after yourself. That, after the work that you do, because sometimes yoga classes can be quite hard, so you're making an effort. So why would you then treat yourself poorly by not nourishing yourself with foods that are healthy? Why would you continue to consume substances that are harmful? Sometimes, okay, I've still seen people, practice yoga and still do whatever it is that they do. But oftentimes, there is a link between frequently practicing yoga and then wanting to eat healthfully, and they sleep better, so they feel better. And because they feel better, because they've been sleeping better, they don't have they don't have as many cravings, so they're not eating as many sweets, depending on as much substances or, snacky snacks. Sometimes. Me, myself, I'm eating laksa, okay? But overall, right? You really do start to treat your body like a temple. So you stop giving it trash. So you stop trashing it. Some people, okay? So, and as you do that, your physical health improves because you're exercising, essentially. Even though I don't do yoga for exercise, but a lot of people do. And you will get the benefits of it. You'll get the mental benefits even if you do it for exercise. And because you feel better, you start behaving in a way that people respond to positively, and then hopefully you feel better about yourself again, and then you treat yourself better, and it just keeps going around and around. Do you know what I mean? So that's a little bit about the benefits of yoga.